for joining us. My name is Yihong from World Scientific Publishing, and today we have lined up a workshop on how to successfully get your research paper published. This program is organized in partnership with the Uzbek Japan Innovation Center for Youth, so we must thank our friends there for making this happen as well. Our speaker today is Ms. Joy Kwek, Deputy Director of World Scientific's Life Sciences and Medicine team, and she brings with her a wealth of knowledge working with journal submissions. She will share her insights and experience through years of working with journal editorial boards as well as with authors. We will have some time for the Q&A, so if you want to prepare some questions, please do so. And in the meantime, we do ask that you keep your mics muted and cameras off. And the session will also be recorded for those who cannot make it today. Now, before we get into the presentation proper, can I first invite Dr. Nagiza Amirova from the UJICY to say a few words. And Nagiza is also my partner in crime in setting this workshop up. Nagiza, please.
Thank you very much, Ihon. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to Singapore. I know it's already afternoon in Singapore. I first of all would like to express my deepest gratitude to World Scientific for arranging this seminar, this webinar for us, because this is an excellent opportunity for everybody, for our researchers, for our scientists, for our students, to learn about the publishing process and to learn from the insights, to learn how the editor thinks. Because as you all know, now in Uzbekistan, we all are trying to get our the science and also are trying to get our publications on more international level. And everybody is very much concerned in any university here about getting their papers published in Scopus in journals, in high impact factors journals. So I believe this is a good opportunity for all of us to know and to hear directly from publishers and from editors, from a very from the leading scientific publishing company, World Scientific. And most of you know that I had a pleasure and an honor to work with World Scientific. I know how they work. They have an excellent team of very enthusiastic, very energetic, and very driven people who love their job, who are doing their best. And this is why I'm so much excited and so much happy and grateful that we were able to arrange this. Now I would like to pass it to Joy. And please start the presentation. But I also want to encourage our participants from Uzbekistan to listen carefully and to actively ask questions, because that's a very good and maybe the only chance for you to talk to editors directly. And I know that now we have some people from different ministries as well, Ministry of Innovative Development and Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education. And also I think that we will be joined by the Embassy of Uzbekistan in Tokyo, so which also shows the how timely the topic is, how important the topic is for Uzbekistan. And I also want to encourage our counterpart from the ministries to join the after presentation discussion and to ask questions to establish the networking with World Scientific. Now, with any further ado, I would like to pass it on to Joy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nagiza. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Joy. I'm from the Life Sciences Department in World Scientific, and we are all based in Singapore. So let me just, first things first, we are unique in that we publish both books and journals. Unique in the sense that when you publish in journals with us, we also cross-promote and publish, promote to our book sellers and our book authors. So to begin with, World Scientific is one of the largest in Asia, and we have over 600 books annually and over 140 journals. So we are based, as I mentioned, we're based in Singapore, and homegrown. We now have over 13 regional offices overseas, including India, China, Beijing and Shanghai to be specific, and also Germany and UK in London, and in the US, New Jersey, amongst a few other countries. How the company was founded was actually born out of the encouragement of two very famous people. I think they are probably household names to some of you, C.N. Young, Professor C.N. Young, and Professor Abdul Salam. We publish in all areas of STEM, as well as in the social sciences. And some of our strengths, I mean, we have branched out in those areas, but our main pillar, our main subject area is, or we started out in the physical sciences, and that is where we are strongest, both in terms of books and journals. So if you're a physicist and you wish to publish with us, you are guaranteed of being able to reach out to the right people in the field, making sure your publication will be read by some of the top physicists in the world. And also we will be, our network in those areas in terms of librarians and the channels that we promote to, like Index, PubMed, SCIE, yeah, it's all very strong in those areas. So the previous picture was our headquarters, and this is World Scientific Around the World, which I've mentioned earlier. The year is when it was established. Okay, so some of the subjects we publish, as I mentioned, Spinach on the Ceiling was published by a Nobel laureate as well, and this is in the area of theoretical chemistry. And we have Learning from Graphene, which is the area of material science, and Reversing Climate Change, which everybody knows is a very hot topic now. So these are all books. Today, the focus will actually be on journals, but I thought I quickly mention some of the very popular books that we publish in these subject areas, because as I said earlier, we believe that the two groups of people, the two groups of authors that we have, or the two sets of readers, or the community that actually the scientists and the researchers that really use our products are one and the same. So we try to reach out to as many people as possible. Okay, so these are some of the famous authors that we have. Just showing you. World Scientific also publishes books from, as I mentioned, Nobel laureates and the field medalists. And we have more than 100 titles by the Nobel laureates. As you can see, these are just some of them. In addition to books, they are also, they publish in our journals as well. Okay, so today the focus is on journal publishing and what are the things to consider. Right, of course, the first step is in selecting the right journal. If you have gone to our World Scientific website, you will see that there are a variety of journals that we have as our products, and there's some overlap in the journals, but of course that each will have its strategic strengths and scope. So you have to make your choice based on these few bullet points here. As you can see, you first have to check the scope of the journal, and sometimes it doesn't really give very specific details just based on a few paragraphs on the website. So a best indication would be to actually go into some of the published issues and read the abstracts that are present of published papers, and that will give you a better idea of the kind of paper that the journal is looking for. You have to check on the readership, who actually subscribes to the journal, who is likely to download the articles, and of course, all scientists are concerned with the impact factor of the journal, whether it is of a reasonable standing, and the speed of publication, which is usually dependent on how fast your paper is accepted, how fast it actually goes through the review process, and how visible your journal is. That means how many different places it is indexed in, whether it's just in, you can just find it in EBSCO, or you can find it in Scopus, or you can find it in PubMed. You know, the more places it is indexed in, the greater visibility, the greater coverage. That means your article is most likely to be discovered, most likely to be read. And then there's of course the page charges. Is it going to be, what kind of submission fee does the journal require? Or is it upon acceptance that you have to pay such charges? So you have to check on all of that before you make a decision. How you go about preparing your manuscript for the journal? Well, every journal will have their own set of instructions. Okay, they don't vary significantly, but there's always a template that you should follow. There are guidelines, and how the journal is prepared, how the journal paper is prepared, what is the various sections that the journal looks for. So the best way, okay, you have to browse sample copies of the journal. Like I mentioned earlier, sample published papers would be your best guide. And also you have to decide what kind of article you are actually submitting. Is it just a research article, or is it a review paper, or is it maybe just a case study? So all of that belongs to choosing the article type. Okay, open access or non-open access, that is actually a different discussion, but in summary, you have to decide whether the journal that you're submitting for is an open access journal, or it's a non-open access, a hybrid journal, meaning a journal that is not going to require for the author to pay article processing charges, versus an open access journal which requires the author to pay open access charges, article processing charges. So again, that's something, it's dependent on the journal that you submit to. Some authors, especially the important authors in with very high H index and with working in a research field that the journal covers, will get special invitations, and they are the ones that probably have a fast track peer review process, because their papers are will definitely bring in the citations that the journal wants, and it is in the right area, it's covering the right research topic. So those are the specially invited papers. Okay, getting down to writing. So I'm sure many of the people in the audience today will probably be a lot more familiar with all these steps than I am, because you're authors yourself, because you choose a title, and we recommend that the title be less than 15 words. Some research papers we have seen have titles that are 3 or 4 lines long, which really much too long. It should be clear and concise in less than 15 words and enough to attract the reader's attention, and also have enough information within the title. The abstract. The abstract provides a summary, a brief summary of the paper. So it briefly mentions the problem, the research problem, the objectives, the method, and also the conclusions, but briefly, all within one paragraph. So readers very often make the decision whether to read your paper based on the abstract. So try to convey why your work is interesting or novel, or if there's new research in the abstract. And also to bear in mind that in subscription-based journals, it's really only the abstract that readers read because it's free to read. Or anybody just doing a simple Google search for your work or your paper will only be able to see the abstract or read the abstract because the actual body of the paper is behind the paywall. So they can't really see, they can't read the whole paper unless they pay for it. But the abstract is the part that will encourage them to want to read more. So this part is really very important. Okay, so more tips on how to write the abstract. You have to state the research problem clearly, to explain why it is important and why it's interesting. So for instance, the problem may arise from conflicting views about an issue, then state why its resolution is important. Yes, and then the next part, don't have references within your abstract, don't cite figures and tables. You can always choose to rewrite the abstract after the completion of the paper. Sometimes that happens because maybe upon finishing the paper, you realize that there are some important points you want to add into the abstract, especially when it comes to the conclusion. Okay, the next section after the abstract is the introduction of your paper. What does the introduction contain? It's supposed to give some sort of a background of your work, maybe even review other published work that's related to what your paper is talking about. Should not be more than 10% of the total length or less than 2 typed pages. Do not have unnecessary background or critical statements. Some authors tend to delve into the history, into historical work involving the paper. That's if you go too far back, it's not necessary, and it can be a bit it can become very irrelevant. So it's best to maybe only make more recent comparisons. At the end of your introduction, can you give a brief outline of the organization of your paper? So like by the time the reader reads to the end of the introduction, he or she should know what to expect when reading the whole paper. So method is the next section. Methods usually is accompanied with the materials, what materials are used as well. So the method is probably the easiest section to write because it's exactly how the experiment or the study was carried out. Give details, but do not over-explain some scientific procedures. It is important to give reasons for the choice of the particular method or formulation. Why did you choose that particular method? Why not some other method? You can do a small comparison at this section just to choose why the method was chosen. Just to explain why the method was chosen. So when presenting results, We need to describe the outcomes of the research. Need to emphasize on some of the important new findings. Don't dwell on the results that are not important, obviously, and indicate a range of validity. Tables and graphs, as we all know, are the best way to present data. They must be clear in your paper. Don't use overly small font or lines that are too faint. They don't reproduce well in the final paper after typesetting. And if it's not clear and it's not clear to the reader, then it's not well produced. So best at this section to present results that are clear, unbiased, and convincing, and presented in an objective way. Also, we should compare results with other similar experiments done in previously published papers, if available. The discussion section, which is almost towards the end, is where you analyze and interpret the results. You can favor one explanation of your results, but also mention alternative explanations. Yeah, a good paper will consider all options, you see. So, but in the end, okay, that is the conclusion part. But in the discussion, you're supposed to discuss all areas. And if the findings are only supportive rather than decisive, should not overstate the importance of the results. So be concise and informative, keep speculation to a minimum, and justify your assertions. Some of the reminders during preparation of the discussion. Conclusion is self-explanatory. You have to decide on the final outcome of your work, the final result, and how what is the summary, what is the discovery that was made, and a possible third possibility here is to identify future research directions. So you conclude for your own study, your own research, you make a summary, and finally you have to look into the future and also suggest further work, and in what area, in what topic. Do not discuss about, okay, what it says here, the tip, avoid more research is needed. It's a bit ambiguous. It doesn't really help. So it's supposed to be, as the author of the paper, it's best to be as specific as possible on what additional original work has to be carried out and how to improve the current findings that you've made in your paper. So the key is to be specific. Things to avoid: incomplete data, right? Which is sometimes very obvious that the researcher or the scientist has rushed to publish and did not actually conclusively finish the experiment. So it will not reflect well, and it's best avoided. Conclusions should always be supported by data, and do not have any unsubstantiated claims. Do not have poor quality figures. Incomplete and outdated references. Yes, sometimes the author has a tendency to have a very long reference section. That is usually not required, because it's always best to include only the most recent references in the last, maybe keep it to under 40 references in the last 5 to 10 years at the most, no longer than that. Checklist. Now, does it contain a novel? Does your paper contain a novel, clear, and interesting message? Is it logical? So is it presented in a systematic way? Is there like, is it communicated effectively with short sentences, easy to understand, easy to comprehend? because no amount of wonderful writing can make up for lack of content. Determining how original your research is. Well, again, this little diagram here is a little bit self-explanatory. I mean, you can choose to dwell in existing domains or what is termed as old problems, and the paper will be discussing existing methodologies, and or maybe it would propose a new solution to an old problem. Then there's the kind of paper which will stand out because it is dealing in new domains, and maybe it's a new application of an existing solution, something innovative, something breakthrough even, and what they call maybe even the stuff of Nobel Prizes. So submitting your paper, there is always supposed to be a cover letter written by the author himself. It's just short, just to say what the title is, where you're submitting it, and also to state that it's a declaration to show that your paper is original, that hasn't been copied or hasn't been published elsewhere, that you are only just submitting to our journal for consideration first. Submission platforms. Well, at World Scientific, we use what is called Editorial Manager for majority of our journals. It's supported by Aries systems, and that is the norm now. I mean, in earlier days, it was still very primitive. You will have papers submitted by post or even via email as email attachments, but that doesn't allow us to track the progress of your paper. So if you use a submission system such as Editorial Manager, at the point of submission to the point of acceptance or rejection, you can track every step of the way, whether it is currently being reviewed, whether it is undergoing revision, or how many days left before the reviewer completes the revision, to that level of detail. Examples of tools used. These are, I'm not sure we call it software or special programs that we use to check for plagiarism, or Crossref is actually, the name itself implies that it allows us to check that a submission against published work on the internet or anywhere from all other journals, to check whether there are how much similarity there is with published work. So it helps us to check for plagiarism. And ORCID or ORCID is how we identify researchers, because there are many researchers with similar names, identical even, in some cases, their first and last names are the same. So we need for them to supply their ORCID ID, so that we know that it's actually a different person submitting that work, not the same author from before. Now, the journal review process, this is a flow chart here, which I'll go through very quickly, because it's quite straightforward. But having said that, it does vary from journal to journal. So this is just the most common flow chart, right? So a corresponding author submits a paper, and the editor-in-chief will be the one who first views the paper and decides whether or not to let it enter the peer review process. There are cases where it is rejected outright by the editor-in-chief because it's out of scope, or because it's just not scientific enough, or the quality just is not good. So he makes the decision for it to enter the peer review process, and that is when the handling editor is assigned. So obviously the editor-in-chief doesn't review every paper. The editor-in-chief is probably an expert in only one field or maybe a few fields, but he has a whole board and a whole team of reviewers who are better equipped to handle certain papers that are in certain subject areas. So what happens is he decides who is best able to handle it, and who in turn will assign the appropriate reviewer. So the reviewers assigned, this part of the process usually takes the longest time because it is difficult to identify the right reviewers for the paper sometimes, because papers can be very specific in specific areas, and trying to locate those similar reviewers in those areas can be difficult, and trying to make sure that they reply positively to the invitation is also takes time. So that is the longest process. But once the peer review is conducted and the decision is made whether to revise the paper or to just simply accept because it is good enough, then from then on, the process is very quick. So the authors may be made to revise based on the reviewer's comments, and upon revision of the paper, it returns back to the handling editor again, who may or may not be able to make a decision on whether to accept at that point. If he can't make the decision, he will go back to his reviewers again and say, how is this revised version? Is it good enough for publication? Can we pass it? Then the decision is made after consulting with the same reviewers. Okay, earlier I mentioned that sometimes the hardest step or the greatest delay in the whole process is in finding suitable reviewers. We do consult the authors themselves on who they recommend as potential referees, because they of course know best who their peers are in the field, who is also doing the same research in other labs. So they are the best person to recommend. And often these are the suggested names are often the ones who do agree to review. It's just best not to suggest somebody in the same institution, because we want an unbiased review. Some allow you to opt to blind certain reviewers. You can request for your manuscript not to be reviewed by individuals who do not see eye to eye with your work. That is more the exception than the norm. We don't really have such occurrences. Usually, I don't really come across any request to block out reviewers, specific reviewers from their paper. Okay, recommended etiquette. Okay, this is a bit, again, is more the exception than the norm. Usually authors do not argue with the referees because review comments and reports are usually very detailed. If they reject, there's always a very convincing explanation already. If it's a short explanation, it's just simply the paper does not fit in the scope of your journal, then that is cannot be argued. They may be able to recommend some other journals that are more suited for your paper. So there are, however, authors who do argue, and we just have to stand our ground usually, because the whole idea of the whole premise of publishing is based on peer review. And if we don't respect the reviewers' comments, then it's not really maintaining the quality of the journal. So it is very important that all of their comments are adhered to. If the referees demand additional studies which are time consuming to carry out or beyond the scope of the paper, do not respond in an argumentative tone. Yeah. Again, this is more the exception than the norm. When submitting a revision, respect the deadline. You can always ask for an extension of the deadline, especially if the revision is a major one. That is almost always granted. And when submitting your revision, you should include a copy of the referee's report and a copy of response to the referee's report. So say, for example, the referee's report has all these 5 points, and out of the 5 points, you have a response for every one of those points, and that is the letter that you have to include together with your revised manuscript. And do not forget to thank the referee. So this 3 items will go back to the referee, who has the power basically to decide whether your revised manuscript is good enough or not. Reasons for rejection, as mentioned earlier, out of scope, poorly prepared, meaning like inconclusive results or no conclusion even. Insufficient results, scientific quality is substandard. Of course, this will be based on what the peer reviewers' comments and reports say. Unsubstantiated assumptions, improper conclusion, plagiarism. In the case of plagiarism, it is rejected very early on. It may not even enter the peer review process. We conduct the checks even before we involve the referees, so as not to waste their time. Some common mistakes. Submission of papers which are clearly out of scope. Failure to format the paper according to the guidelines for authors. Inadequate standard of English, inadequate response to reviewers, resubmission of rejected manuscripts without proper revision. It is a pity if the author has been asked to revise and all of these mistakes were made, because it would be an outright rejection from that point on already, even though there was a chance for the paper to have been accepted if the revision was done properly. So do not make these common mistakes. How to avoid outright rejection? Be self-critical and check through carefully, get feedback from your colleagues, and revise your manuscript several times before submission. Do not plagiarize, that is a no-no rule. Submit to a journal that your paper will stand a fair chance to be considered. Yes, so again, make sure to check the scope of the journal. And it's always good to aim high. I mean, all researchers want to aim for the journal with the highest impact factor, but they will also might be very quick to reject the paper compared to an average journal. Cautionary notes. Submit your paper to only one journal at a time. That is a very important rule. Do not resubmit your paper to another journal without revising according to feedback. You may get the same reviewers. If a paper is rejected more than 3 times, it means the paper has major defect, which requires overhaul before resubmission. More resources for authors. Right. So these are just some of the websites that you can visit to understand a little bit more about how to practice ethical publishing, and also a directory of open access journals, so you know which open access journals may fit your paper if you're interested in open access publishing. What to do if still rejected? Well, don't give up, keep trying. Even papers of Nobel laureates get rejected. Address referees' comments, try to fix them and revise your paper before submitting to another journal. In World Scientific, we have what is known as a cascade system. So like if you were to submit your paper to one journal and it is rejected, there is this option to cascade to another journal, which we deem related to that first journal that you published, that you've submitted to. And of course, ultimately, it's the author's decision to whether he or she wants to publish in that alternative journal. But what it's good about the editorial manager for us is that it gives you that option to publish somewhere else in the event that your first submission was rejected. So there are always alternatives. So if there's no plan A, there's a plan B. So like alternatively, you could appeal to the editor explaining why you feel your work did not receive a fair review. Writing a rebuttal letter to the editor early rarely reverses the decision. This actually goes back to how we shouldn't argue at the final decision. If the final decision is to reject or that, it's just not publishable in this journal, it's always best to just look for the alternative. Right, so your paper is finally accepted. So what happens next? This is where the production process begins. When the accepted paper, okay, let me, okay, from this stage onwards, oh, no, I have to go back, sorry. Okay, the manuscript is uploaded for processing. This is the accepted manuscript, right? So the copy editor will start his or her production work on your manuscript. What does copy editing mean? They don't actually change the content of your paper. They check for inconsistencies, meaning your section headings, whether you've put them in the right layout, right format, whether you've cited all your figures and all your tables, whether your references are cited, things like that. So they don't actually change the content, they check for inconsistencies. These days, there are a lot of references that are actually URLs, links to websites. They also check the validity of those links because many of those links might actually be not valid anymore. And then it'll get rejected on the electronic publishing site. So they help check on that. Check on language, of course. Sometimes if the English is really substandard, we would have to return to the author and tell the author you need to get your paper edited by a content editor at least, because it's to that level where the English is not comprehensible. Then they have to bring it up to a certain standard where we can perform copy editing. We are able to point our authors to the right people to get help in those areas because they have a group of scientific editors who can help check to that level of degree before they return to us to submit for publishing. So after that is done, the editorial assistant will check that the corrections, the markups are clearly made so that the typesetter can comprehend those corrections. And when the typesetter incorporates the corrections, the typesetter is also laying out the manuscript in such a way that it is a journal format. So your figures are nicely placed with your text. Then these are what, this stage will be the first reading proofs because they are formatted. So the author gets to see them again, nicely formatted, and make any last minute corrections so that he doesn't have to, because once it's published, once it goes online, authors are not allowed to make corrections anymore because it would have gone out to all our service providers, our indexing agencies, and everybody already. Even if we replace the PDF on our website, it hasn't, doesn't stop the other places that we have disseminated to from. They don't necessarily upload the revised PDF anymore because they've already used the first version. So it's always best to make sure make sure your paper is perfect before you even pass it to press. So this is why your paper, once approved, is sent to the EPUB department for conversion and upload. So then your paper has been published. Now what? Okay, think you can read that for yourself. Of course, we all want our articles to be read by as many people as possible. We want our articles, and one step further is, of course, one step that's even better is for your articles to be cited. Because what if your article is widely cited, what does it do? It helps increase your H index. It helps you be famous, for want of a better word. But being famous helps when you're choosing the next journal you want your next paper to be published in. Your paper is not likely to be the last article you want to publish. Okay, open access. That's a different type of publishing or different platform from hybrid journals. Okay. Right. As I mentioned earlier, open access is when your journal paper is not hidden behind a subscription paywall. So everybody can read it and download it. So of course, being an author, you want that to happen since you want as many people to read and cite your paper. So the authors, in order to be sure of that happening, they are willing to use funds or institutional funds or personal research funds to fund for open access publishing for their paper. So they can choose to have only their paper in open access. So only their paper is free to read. What amount is the article processing charge varies with the journal. Oh, here it is. So approximately US 2,000 per article, regardless of the number of pages for your paper. Where can you get your money? Either from the university that you work for, or some research funds have set aside a certain portion for OA publishing. And some universities may have read and publish agreements with publishers. You should check with your university if they have such an agreement. Our OA policy for journals, it varies from journal to journal. So always check the journal website first before you begin. So these are our OA journals. What I mean by OA journals are that the whole journal is open access, which means that every paper that is submitted to the journal is open access, not just your paper. So like, for example, this first journal here, Mathematics for Industry, if your paper is accepted to this journal, it will automatically be open access without the author having to pay article processing charge in this specific case, because the journal itself is already funded by the university in Japan, and by funding this journal, they want every accepted publication in this journal to be open access. So that's in the event that funds are lacking, those are the kind of journals that you want to aim for. And then there are other journals where they are just partially supported, like this Journal of Innovative Optical Health Sciences. It's only partially supported. So the article processing charge may not be as high as US 2,000. Maybe it is a much lower amount, so you might want to look into that. It could be below 1,000. So again, depends on the kind of fundings, the kind of OA funding you have available. And of course, the field, whichever journal suits your paper. So we can go to the Open Access Journals website. What else can you do? Okay, you can increase discoverability of your paper by sharing with your contacts on social media. Maybe get your institution to, maybe there's an institution newsletter that you can announce to. Some institutions pay attention to altmetrics. Altmetrics will take care of these. When you link back to your article, use the generic DOI link. Yeah, this is how you cite your article as well, using DOI. ORCID is just a means of identification. Other frequently asked questions. Can you submit your manuscript in MS Word file? Yes, the editorial manager system that we use will allow that. How do I know the average days needed in peer review or the full process from submission to publication? If this info is not stated on the journal website, it can be estimated from the history dates. History dates meaning look at published papers again for that journal. The archive issues, they will have dates of article received and dates accepted. So you can more or less tell, oh, this is going to take 6 months before my paper is accepted. How can I cite my article before it is officially published? Mentioned earlier, you use the DOI number, which can be found on the accepted papers page of the journal. What supplementary material can be posted with my article on the journal's webpage? Yeah, picture files, video clips, computing program files. What is supplementary material? This is material that will not be published within your paper, because obviously you can't publish a video clip in your paper. So there is a supplementary tab that is linked to your paper where authors can it's a tab that you can just click on to watch the video. So it's linked to your article. Can I share my published article PDF by posting on the internet? Well, the author's rights. This is yet another advantage of publishing on open access, because we allow for sharing for open access, because in open access, the author owns the rights to the paper. So yes, so the answer to this question is yes, of course you can share. If it's not an open access paper, what are the author's rights in sharing? I believe if he's sharing to his contacts, because we want as many readers as possible, it is allowed, but just to ensure that if people were to use a figure from the paper, that they should cite accordingly the source of the paper. How should I request permission? Again, like I mentioned, World Scientific believes in sharing as much information as possible. We do not charge for reuse of material generally, but we ask that our authors cite the original source. Okay, so I've come to the end here. If you have any queries, you can always email at this email address, and we will try to answer you as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joy. So I think we have a couple minutes for Q&A questions if anybody has them. And actually, I think I do see one in the chat posted by Sador. So this is a question that seems to have is loaded with other sub questions as well. Joy, are you able to see the chat, or should I just get this read out?
I think, can you read it to me, please?
Okay, all right. Okay, I'll just get to the question itself. So Sador is asking that the choice of journals is very interesting for everyone. I guess that's always important, right? And the question is, which journals are reliable and which journals will publish articles for free? How do you find out about that? And which sources are reliable in finding out that kind of information?
Which sources are available to find out?
Reliable source of gaining some insight as to what journals are good. So if you're looking at, say, impact factors,
Yeah.
where would that information be sourced from?
I would say the easiest way to find out more about the journals that you are interested in, to find out what quality they are and whether it's worthwhile, is simply just by Googling and looking at the journal's website and looking at how many issues they have published and how regular they are. So say of course, the best indicator is impact factor, but if your field is a very niche field and generally, typically the journals in that field don't have very high impact factors at all, the next best indicator is to look at the published issues. So say, for example, if the journal is already in its 30th volume, so it's a very well-established journal. It has been around for a long time because it's volume 30 means that it's been publishing for 30 years, and also it is on time. They are currently like, for example, it's May now and they are already publishing the June issue. All these are very good indicators of how healthy the journal is. And if you look at the papers that are published on the journal and the citation count, I mean, obviously not all journals are as equipped as our journals in demonstrating the citation counts of each paper, but there are some that are able to, where you can look at the published papers and see what their counts are, and if the counts are relatively high, like maybe the double digits, then your paper is in good hands for that journal. And the last way, final indication is the editorial board. If the editorial board is international and not just confined to one region of the world, again, that it's a good journal.
I think there was another part of the question about which journals publish articles for free. And I think in general, subscription journals don't charge, apart from certain instances where there's page charge or handling fees. So of course, the other kinds of journals that would charge would probably be the open access ones.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Right. Any other questions from the audience? Actually, if not, I think we are right on time to close today's session. Right.
So just a minute, Ihon, I just wanted to make a little bit, just to make clarification, because I guess that people here, they probably have got a little bit confused. So in World Scientific, you have two types of journals, right? I mean, journals with open access. So those who want to get their paper published in open access journals, they obviously need to pay, and this gives them an opportunity for their articles to be read by everybody, by anybody for free. So which is, I mean, I know that many authors, they do use this option because they want their articles to be free of charge for anyone who gets access to them through the internet, right? But you also have some, I mean, journals with no open access, just the normal journals where they can also get their papers published.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and on your website, people, the researchers and scientists, they can easily identify which journal has this request, which journal is with open access, which is not, right?
Yes, we have an entire section just dedicated to the open access journals. So if you were to click on the open access tab, it will only lead you to those journals. So every other journal by default is not open access.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There are only about 20 journals in World Scientific that are open access journals.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And both kinds of journals, they go through the same peer review process. So that's
Yes, and I also think that the question about the reliable sources and which journals are and which sources we can consider as reliable is because here in Uzbekistan we recently have faced an issue with publishing in a predators journals.
predatory journal. Okay.
Yes, yes. So that's I guess that was the ground for the question that was raised by Sardor. Just to let you know why this is why people are so interested. But I can tell you that in World Scientific, all journals are highly reputed, and you can also, as Joy mentioned, get access to them and just check the issues. I guess that you also provide some the information about the journal itself and information about the editorial board, and all other information is also provided on the internet, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, yeah.
I just want to add to this point about the predatory publishing. Actually, you cannot just go by which is a reliable source, because even recently there's a journal from Elsevier which is highly reputable. There is a journal which one of the authors is actually sort of selling co-author rights. That means after he's published, he's ready to, his paper has been accepted already, then he is asking people to pay him so that they will be added as co-authors. So this is also not, in the end, the paper was actually retracted. So you cannot
it
see.
might be an issue with the reputation of the author.
Yeah. So you just, as Joy mentioned, you just go by like which journal has published for a long time to judge as a good gauge of its reliability. It's not that a journal is from a particular publisher or source that means it's reliable. You have to examine it yourself. And most of whether you want to pay or not, all the journals have journal homepages, and usually they will have a submission guideline or author guideline. You should go in and explore yourself. Usually most of the details will be explained there.
And I can also now see that Lakshmi, she has shared a link. So all participants from Uzbekistan, you can just go to the chat and follow the link that was shared by Lakshmi. This is something that also additional information on the question.
All right, thanks, Lakshmi. Any last words from our speaker, or anything else from Nagisa?
No, I just wanted to once again thank you guys for providing this opportunity for us for the webinar. I really enjoyed myself, Joy's presentation, the abstract tips and all things that you and researchers and scientists, they need to prepare and to get ready for before they submit the manuscript, and the whole process. It was really, really interesting and useful. Just from my side, I want to add that in World Scientific, I know that you guys are working with in a very, very good team. All editors, they are in charge of each particular area, and all of them, each of them having the scientific background, the background of this relative area, and also they work together with marketing executives. And this is, I think, also one of the reasons why World Scientific is such a successful publisher, and why their articles in their journals, the articles that they published in their journals are cited many times, and also the books. Thank you so much. Everybody, you just received the email. You can also directly contact World Scientific or UGCY, Uzbek Japan Innovation Center of Use is also ready to help you if you need any help from us on this matter. But just once again, on behalf of everyone, on behalf of our participants from Uzbekistan, I would like to thank you Thank you, Joy, Mankit, Lakshmi. Hi to you. And of course, Ihon, thank you so much. And I hope that, yeah, we can, oh, by the way, also some information for our Uzbek participants. With the help of Japan International Cooperation Agency, we were able to buy some books from World Scientific. These are the books that I'm currently reading because, you know, I'm the director of Innovation Center of Youth. So I'm now reading this, very nice. I really enjoy reading these books, guys. And we have, we will be opening our library. So you all can also visit UGCY. You can come and you can see yourself how good the books are, because this is really a real big pleasure to read the books by World Scientific. And we have them in different areas now, like chemistry. I think we have some on computer science and physics, and some in I guess even economics. So that's I can share the list with those who are interested. You can come when we will open the library, and of course feel free to read the books here and get the information about World Scientific as well. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Thanks so much. And we're very happy to do this for the first time actually in Pakistan, in partnership with the UJICY. So
Yeah.
everybody on the registration list will be set the video recording, and so if you do not have time to absorb everything today, you can do it at your own time.
Oh, by the way, Ihon, also some of my staff from UGCY, they already published with World Scientific. I was very happy because when I came here and when we talked, they said that they know World Scientific, they have already published. And I hope that all people, all those, I think that we had about more than 70 people now gathering for this particular event, this webinar. So I hope that now we will have many more submissions from Uzbekistan. This was actually the main goal of today's webinar. And I hope that in the future, I really want to see many more articles and even books. Now I know that there is one author from Academy of Science of Uzbekistan who is working on his manuscript on black holes, on astronomy, and his book is now being his manuscript was accepted, and it's now in the process. So I hope to see that book as well published, as well as I am really willing to see many more articles being published submitted and written by Uzbek scientists and researchers and being published by World Scientific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.